Assalamualaikum and hi class. So today we are going to learn chapter 4, part 2, which is the market equilibrium in the section of government intervention in the market. So previously we have learned about what is market equilibrium. We have learned how to calculate all these consumer and producer surplus. And for today we are talking about the government intervention in the market. So this chapter is not that long for part 2, because we are only talking about what are the government's policies, or what are the ways the government trying to do in order to help this market to achieve equilibrium price and below price market or the above price market. So we are going to talk about ceiling price, price floor, and then some of the tax incidents, the benefits and the disadvantages of government intervention. So without further ado, let's start. So this is the government intervention in the market. So this one you can open your slide and try to see together the slide together with me. So what is ceiling price? One of the government intervention in order to help control the price in the market is ceiling price. They will impose ceiling price. So what is ceiling price? Ceiling price is a legally mandated maximum price that sellers are allowed to charge for goods. So when the government sets a legal limit on the price of a good or service with the aim of reducing prices below the market equilibrium price. So sini, usually ceiling price, they will be imposed to goods that will be sold at a very high price. For example, during our first COVID-19, when the pandemic has started, has just begun, do you still remember that the prices of hand sanitizer and face mask has increased tremendously? Like sometimes per piece they sell at 5 ringgit. Okay, so this is what the government is trying to help. They are trying to help that so that these sellers, they cannot impose too high price on a specific item, especially on essential items, the necessity items. Okay, this is to help the consumer. For example, during when the supply is less than the quantity demanded, for example, macam face mask last time, the supply is very less than the demand. We have the demand has actually suddenly surged to thousands, millions per day. Tetapi dia punya supply tak banyak, because last time the pandemic has just begun. So supply for that face mask dia tak terlampau banyak, because not everyone is going to use face mask, only on certain industries and maybe on certain people yang ada allergy tu je yang pakai face mask. Kita tak macam Japan. Japan usually they already implemented face mask ni dah macam dia punya culture sendiri. They always use face mask outside. But here in Malaysia, it's not something that we always use. So of course, kalau tiba-tiba ada pandemik ni, people are demanding for face mask and the supply in the market tak banyak. So in order, so this supplier, this seller, they are taking advantage. Dia tengok, oh banyak yang request for this item. Meaning to say that face mask is considered limited stocks lah, limited items. So consumer, bila dia tengok benda tu tak banyak dijual dekat market, tetapi mereka perlu untuk menggunakan barang tu, so they are willing to pay at any price that has been sold to them, that has been offered to them. So macam last time, sometimes one piece mask dia boleh jual 50 ringgit. Ada yang sampai 50 ringgit tu. Dia charge satu helai saja mask. Padahal before this, the mask itself, like one box only 10 ringgit. One box 100 sheets is only 10 ringgit. Sebab tak ada orang pakai. Okay. So in this case, this is where the government plays a role, di mana mereka meletakkan ceiling price. So ceiling price ni adalah a legal limit on the price of a good or service with the aim of reducing prices below the market equilibrium. Dia adalah the maximum price yang boleh dijual oleh this seller kepada customer kepada dia adalah price yang paling tinggi yang boleh dijual oleh seller kepada customer. For example, when they it sets the price limit below market equilibrium. So for example, kita tengok satu example. This one. Let's say this is the price, this is quantity, this is the supply, this is the demand. For example, 5 ringgit is the equilibrium price at 20 units. Okay, for example, this is the equilibrium point. As you guys know, this one is the intersection between the supply and demand is where the equilibrium point arise. Yeah. So this one, let's say in this contoh, 5 ringgit adalah dia punya equilibrium point. So dalam price ceiling, dia dah set a maximum price. And usually the maximum price yang boleh dijual tu adalah below the equilibrium point. So over here. Okay. So dia jadi mungkin 3 ringgit. So this is the quantity. So dia akan, demand akan, so this is the new price ceiling. So kalau tengok sini, maksud dia kalau penjual tu jual lebih daripada 3 ringgit ni, dia boleh dikenakan saman. Okay? Dia boleh didakwa sebab dia dia violate the government's punya saranan harga. So this is what we call price ceiling. Because the government, dia nak protect customer supaya customer tak terbeban dengan harga yang begitu tinggi. Okay. And the government or an industry regulator can set a maximum price to prevent the market price from rising above a certain level. One aim for this is to prevent monopolistic exploitation. This is what we call monopolistic exploitation. But apabila macam saya bagi contoh lagi, that is the only company yang jual face mask, for example, dia ada supply terhad saja, so dia boleh letak sampai 100 ringgit satu helai kalau dia nak. So this type of thing yang trying to be prevent. We try to prevent. That is why government set this kind of maximum price. To be effective, a maximum price has to be set below the free market price. Free market price maksud dia yang equilibrium price tu lah. Free market price is macam kita tengok daripada equilibrium price. So usually if you want this to be effective, maximum price, which is the price ceiling, has to be set below the free market price. So one example is when shortage of foodstuffs threatens large increases in the free market price. Okay. Macam foodstuff dia, canned foodstuff lah, usually macam sardin ke, tiba-tiba dia shortage. So bila dia shortage, supplier dia boleh sukati je dia pergi increase price tu dalam free market price. Yang tu yang kita kena avoid in this situation. So that's why government campur tangan dan mereka pun set lah the maximum legal price untuk that particular item. Sebab tu kita ada bahan-bahan terkawal, barang terkawal seperti nasi, beras, sugar, apa lagi barang-barang terkawal kita, chicken, things that we use daily usually. Okay. And then house rental also kita buat price ceiling. Nanti kita tengok sini. What is the purpose of ceiling price? The purpose is to protect customers. Kita kena protect customer. And then how? To keep the price of goods below the market equilibrium price by setting the price below market equilibrium. So here, as you can see, this is the market equilibrium. So I use red pen. So this is the market equilibrium. So how do you want to be effective? You need to keep the price of good below market equilibrium, which is this part. P1 is the price ceiling or maximum price. So above P1 dah tak legal dah. Okay, above P1 dia tak legal. Tetapi as good as it is in ceiling price, there are also some disadvantages. Okay, one of the disadvantages ialah by doing the price ceiling, dia akan jadi shortage in supply. Because first, actually supplier dia letak harga tinggi sebab demand terlampau banyak. Bila dah demand terlampau banyak, jadi mereka kena letak harga tinggi sebab dia orang tak dapat nak bagi keperluan kepada pengguna yang melangkaui dia orang punya supply. Okay, dia punya quantity supply. So that's why they set a high price. So those yang betul-betul dapat beli baru dapat beli. Tapi sekarang bila government letak price ceiling, harga kan jadi lebih rendah daripada the market equilibrium. So of course the demand getting higher. The demand is getting higher. Supply units pula akan jadi shortage because the demand will exceed the supply. As you guys already know, the demand and supply punya law kan. Kalau law of demand, the lower the price, the higher the demand. Macam tu juga dengan ni. Bila dia price ceiling kena set, of course you know it is below the market equilibrium. And bila dia below market equilibrium, the price is getting cheaper. And when it is cheaper, of course, the customers or the people will demand for a higher quantity. Okay, so this is one of the disadvantages lah. You see, these are the consequences of setting the ceiling price, which it creates an excess in demand or also known as shortage of a commodity since quantity demanded exceeds quantity supply. So ini dia dah highlight. What are the action to be taken? Bila terjadi benda macam ni, apa the best action that we need to take? Rationing. Okay. For example, one family can only buy one or allocating the goods on the first come, first serve basis. Seperti gula dulu, bila di supply dia rendah daripada dia punya quantity demanded, dia dah ada sistem catuan. Satu family, like one family can only buy 2 packs of sugar. Macam beras, limit satu family tak boleh melebihi 15 kilo. Macam face mask dulu. Let's say, kalau kita pergi eco shop kan dia jual yang dalam satu, kalau you pernah pergi eco shop lah, kan dia jual dalam satu pack tu. Dulu kan dia satu pack tu dalam RM5, 50%. So they actually offered the lowest price lah during that time. So of course ramai nak beli. So in order for everyone to be able to purchase it, these suppliers need to have the idea of rationing. Maksud dia, macam dekat eco shop dia ada letak limit satu purchase hanya 2 paket dibenarkan. So that other customer juga boleh, what do we call it? Ada customer berpeluang untuk membelinya. So I don't know if it's effective or not. In some cases, yes, it is effective, but believe me or not, when I used to work in this retail line, these things, the probability of success, berkesan atau tidak, not really. Yeah, because you cannot monitor whether or not that the next person is from the same family or not. Okay, but at least dia ada effort lah, ada effort untuk try to ration the goods. Kalau kita ikutnya in Taiwan, if I'm not mistaken, during the pandemic last time, dia dah bagi orang untuk ration that item. For example, face mask, dia dah catat dah siapa yang tinggal dalam satu residential tu, dan setiap 1 minggu dia akan top up the mask. Maksudnya dia tak bagi satu pack tu terus pada satu family. Dia akan allocate. Dia banyak kerja lah. Tapi yang tu lebih berkesan. Where you sendiri yang akan monitor. You pergi rumah ke rumah untuk hantar that face mask. Tapi kalau dekat kedai ni, I'm sorry to say, it might work. For some kedai mungkin ada yang jenis yang memang rajin nak tengok satu-satu. Tapi can you actually identify whether or not the next person who's going to buy another 2 packs are coming from your own family or not? From this same family or not? Ya? Mungkin dia boleh bawa 3 orang daripada family member. Lepas tu mereka tiga beli 2 pack. So it is over the rationing yang kita dah buat dalam what do we call it, rules, apabila kita nak jual this kind of item. So I don't know if it is really work or not. So another one is, what are the types of goods that usually have been set ceiling price? Necessity goods like oil, rice, like I mentioned earlier, and then also apply to keep the monthly housing rental below the equilibrium level. So the control of housing rental is referred to as rent control. Okay, dia dah ada harga maksimum yang boleh kita set untuk housing rental. Nanti ada juga yang tauke dia tengok this tenant dia nak set sampai 2,000 untuk satu bilik kecil sebulan. Kalau tak ada housing control, itu yang akan terjadi. In most areas in Sarawak, still ada rumah yang hanya kecil, yang kayu je. Yang satu bilik dia set until 800, 900. It doesn't only happen here. Okay? I think in West Malaysia they still have this, yang those parts yang susah nak dapat rumah tu. Even in Bintulu, this is from my own friends punya experience. He only rented a very small area of room, only room, okay? And he's been charged like 700 per month. Because it is quite hard for you to find house rental dekat sana. Rumah sewa, bilik sewa susah nak dapat. So that's why these suppliers ataupun those toke ni, dia ambil kesempatan. So this is the thing that is trying to be avoided by the government. And then let's look at the advantages. So consumers can buy products at lower price. So this is one of the advantage by setting a ceiling price. These advantages from the consumer's perspective. For example, if the equilibrium price of 1 kilo of chicken is RM7.50. So ini adalah equilibrium price yang sepatutnya disetujui untuk dibeli oleh customer, RM7.50. And the ceiling price, kerajaan pula diturunkan kepada RM6.50 because ceiling price dia kena bawah equilibrium price. So consumer dari sini can enjoy RM1 saving for each kg of chicken. Sebab dia dah willing untuk beli RM7.50, tetapi kerajaan dah set the price below equilibrium point. So dekat sini dia dah boleh save RM1 daripada apa yang dia willing to pay. So this is what we call what are the advantages of ceiling price. But there also are disadvantages. It leads to black market. When there is shortage of goods, some transactions may take place under the control price system, but certain other transaction will take place outside of it. The other transactions are classified as transaction in an illegal market or black market. So bila supplier dia tak cukup dah, sebab harga tu kan rendah, dia dah turunkan harga jadi bawah equilibrium price. So supplier dia mungkin akan mengalami shortage in supply. So dia akan cari cara untuk cari supply luar. I mean illegally. Mungkin dia seludup ke, so dia jual supaya dia dapat jual harga mungkin yang lagi rendah. Tetapi dia dapat beli harga lagi rendah, lepas tu dia boleh jual pada harga yang disetkan oleh kerajaan tu and to gain more profit. So this kind of transaction usually tu adalah illegal market or black market. It is taken outside of the system. Yeah. Another government intervention is price floor. Kita ada ceiling price, kita ada price floor. Kalau by right, kalau you tengok ceiling, you must be thinking about ceiling atas. Okay. So kalau sini adalah graph ya. Usually student dia akan fikir ceiling dekat atas ni. Tak. Kalau ceiling kita bawah, kalau price floor dekat atas. So this is price floor. This is ceiling price. Okay. So what is a price floor? It is a legally mandated minimum price that buyers are required to pay for goods. Most commonly associated with minimum wages in the labor market or guaranteed price support schemes for farmers or other producers. So it is a government-imposed regulations that prevent prices from falling below a minimum level set by government. So it is also called as minimum price. Practices are initiated by the government in the agricultural sector. So the price control is to protect farmers, okay, in the event of the prices of commodities where are too low in the free market. So ini pula untuk protect farmers. Yang tadi farmers lah usually for those yang dalam agriculture sector. Purpose is to protect seller. So price ceiling is to protect customers. Price floor is to protect sellers. How? It is to keep the price of good above market equilibrium by setting the price above market equilibrium. So here, just now, for ceiling price, kita letak sini ceiling price. P1 is ceiling price. So now, price floor adalah di atas equilibrium price, which is the minimum price. Minimum price untuk yang ini untuk seller. Tengok balik ayat ni. Minimum price that buyers are required to pay. So, ini adalah minimum price buyer are required to pay. What are the consequences? It creates surplus of commodity since quantity supply exceed quantity demanded. So apabila di atas oleh equilibrium point ni, law of demand says the higher the price, the lower the quantity demand. So bila dia berada di atas the willing price ni, equilibrium price ni adalah the willing price yang kita willing to buy. Okay? Willing to buy and willing to produce. So bila government dah set price minimum untuk buyer kena beli di atas equilibrium point, jadi dekat sini dia akan menjadikan surplus sebab dekat sini harga dah naik. Bila harga dah naik, buyer tak nak beli. Kuranglah membeli. Dia beli tapi beli pada kuantiti yang lebih sedikit. So supply akan mengalami surplus apabila mereka punya hasil lebih banyak daripada yang dibeli. Okay. So what is the action to be taken? Government buys and gives to school and hospitals. So dekat sini, of course, kita tak boleh lawan law of demand. Melainkan benda tu eksklusif. Mungkin customer still buy. Tapi kalau benda macam agriculture, of course we have choices. We can go to any other places that offer better prices. Kan? So for these local farmers yang tak dapat nak jual lah, dia punya harga vegetable semua tu, apa yang kerajaan buat, mereka beli banyak-banyak produce daripada mereka dan bagi to schools and hospital or maybe anak yatim ke, they do this charity event. kalau you tengok apa yang macam construction punya company, kadang-kadang bukannya personal yang minta this construction worker ni untuk buat rumah ke apa, tak. So yang selalu ambil tender macam ni adalah government. Macam tu juga dengan cafeteria. Government ada bagi tender. Dia ambil tu untuk supply kepada sekolah, kepada universities, sebagai kantin tempat kerajaan. Yang macam tu. Because they want to protect this seller. This seller cannot survive kalau dia hanya bergantung pada diri dan set harga yang sangat rendah. Okay? So government have to take action. Dia tengoklah which industry yang paling perlu to be protected, then they protect, and they get the way they want to help this golongan adalah mereka ambil barang tu, mereka beli dan give to school and hospital. So, what are the types of goods? Normal goods like agricultural, price support. Usually for those yang dalam yang jual sayur tu lah, pergi pasar, kadang-kadang you tengok dia ada under satu pertubuhan ni. Because that one is already ditubuhkan oleh government. Harga tu semua government dah tolong. Mereka just have to set their own, they ambil the price yang the maximum price. Okay, the government already support some of their prices. Yeah? They dah absorb some of the prices. So that's why local still can jual pada harga murah supaya ada customer nak beli. But in fact, some of the price yang tu government dah absorb for them. Untuk petani-petani muda, petani moden sekarang, you tengok usahawan-usahawan yang sekarang, yang you tengok dalam bidang-bidang pertanian yang baru-baru ni, mereka pun dah disubsidize oleh government. What are the advantages? The incomes of the producers are protected and the government purchases any surplus of goods and services. Okay. So di sini income of producers are still protected. Mereka still ada income. Okay. And government purchases any surplus. Apa-apa lebihan, macam lebihan sayur saya cakap tadi, government dah beli untuk diagih-agihkan kepada certain industry yang diorang nak agih. Okay. And the government will also store any surplus good for future use. Low-paid workers are better off with higher wage rate through the price floor, which prevents incomes from falling below a certain level. So price floor also very good to protect the labor forces. Dia ada minimum wage rate. Maksud dia, misalan sekarang kan kita ada minimum wage rate. If I'm not mistaken, like 1,200, something like that. Kalau adalah this worker kena hire dalam harga RM500, dia kena pay RM500 per month, itu dah maksudnya mereka kena violate. Okay? So that one yang government nak prevent. Dia tak nak kita kerja bawah the minimum wage rate. Dulu, yes, last time kalau Sabah Sarawak, we have different minimum wage rate. I'm not really sure right now. Tapi last time ada yang kerja hanya RM300 sebulan. So that one dah below the minimum wage rate. Especially those yang kerja 8 jam satu hari tu. Memang dia fixed hour. Okay. So what are the disadvantages? So the government will need to purchase excess supplies of agricultural commodities such as cocoa, corn, dairy product, and others. Sometimes there will be an overflow of these commodities, which leads to wasted resources as the government purchases are met with taxpayers' money. So ingat, even though dia menolong ni, kadang-kadang kita yang membayar tax tu, our money are being used to buy all this surplus daripada petani-petani yang tak dapat menjual hasil dia. Okay? So akan jadi wastage. Higher wage rate will also create an unemployment problems as the supply of labor is greater than the demand for labor. So bila kerajaan dah setkan some of the disadvantage ni, even though dia boleh protect those labor daripada kerja bawah gaji, tapi dia juga akan create unemployment problems. Sebab apa? Supply of labor tak banyak. For example lah, dekat sini dia, even though kita punya industri tak banyak, we don't really have so much industry, especially here in East Malaysia, especially those yang dekat area rural area tu tak banyak industri. Even you pergi Mukah, you pergi areas Sedikir, industri belum berkembang maju dekat sana. So tak akan ada banyak peluang pekerjaan. Tambah lagi dengan gaji minimum pun sangat tinggi. So of course, the company's initiative is to cut costs. Of course, dia punya objektif adalah to maximize profit. So bila dah ada gaji minimum yang sangat tinggi, dia pun cuba kurangkan labor forces, dan this company akan cuba buat multitask untuk each of the employee. Okay, so di sini akan terjadi dia unemployment creation. So of course, anything yang kita buat ada pros and cons, but there will also be some actions to be taken. Okay. So what are the tax? And then another government intervention is tax incidents. Tax incidents, kita ada effects of taxes on equilibrium price and output. When government imposes tax on sale of goods, the price of goods might rise by the same amount of tax imports. Of course, kita ada tax, harga pun akan naik. So the increase in the price of goods, whether in full, part, or none at all, depends on the burden of tax that falls on the buyer or seller. Okay, dia ada this tax, tax burden dia akan pergi to both buyers and seller. So indirect tax is tax imposed by government on producers or sellers, but paid by or passed on to the end users, which is consumer. So it consists of import duties, excise duties, sales tax, service tax, and export duties. So ingat, sometimes in the kita punya harga barang yang kita dah beli tu actually dia dah include sekali the indirect tax. Ada what we call VAT atau value added tax. So for those yang pernah pergi overseas, you should know that you as a citizen from other country, you actually boleh claim you punya tax daripada overseas tu. Let's say you pergi UK, you beli dekat Harrods, for example. Dalam Harrods punya item tu, dia ada value added tax. That one is what we call the indirect tax yang dia orang impose kepada consumers. Usually value added tax ni hanya dibayar oleh those yang residents in the UK, for example. And then you as the tourist pergi dekat sana, you actually boleh claim this tax dekat airport. You pergi buat isi borang dulu kat Harrods tu, minta dia bagi the what do we call it? Kalau kita ada dia punya tax tu, dia minta dia orang declare berapa peratus tax yang kita boleh claim, then you go to airport, you claim balik you punya harga. So let's say you dah bayar about 20 pounds, 20 pounds. So you pergi dekat airport, you claim balik 20 pounds tu. So usually this value added tax, kalau usually the multinational company have this, so that one hanya paid by the locals. So if you are the non-locals, you boleh claim. Sama juga kalau overseas customer dia pergi ke Malaysia. Usually this only ada dekat multinational company lah, yang macam H&M, Uniqlo, last time Uniqlo, and then we have this Esprit, benda-benda macam tu. They have this what do we call global blue where you can process the foreigner punya transaction and you try to kira dia punya value added tax tu, and then you issue the receipt and ask them to claim dekat tax. Dia ada percentage dia tersendiri. So that is what we call the indirect tax. But now since we don't have this GST anymore, so kita tak ada lagi this claim of tax lah. Tax ni dia orang dah tak dapat claim because kita dah tak ada lagi GST. Okay. But that one is just for additional your additional knowledge lah on tax. So considering that everything that we have already purchased actually inside the market price, macam harga yang kita dah beli tu adalah termasuk tax yang mereka dah charge dalam pembuatan barang-barangan tu. Okay. So these are the example. Please don't be nervous kalau tengok this kind of graph. Usually in the exam, dia memang dah bagi graph ni. Only dia tak, benda yang you kena faham, selalu dia akan bagi this graph, yang ni dia tak bagi, ni dia bagi, area ni dia kosongkan lah. Usually dia tak bagi bahagian area, yang ni dia kosongkan. And then dia hanya bagi demand, supply, and the quantity semua dia bagi. You only need to determine which is which. Okay. So S0 here is the supply, the initial supply. Okay. And then there is a demand curve. This is DD is demand curve. So the initial equilibrium price is when S0 intersect with DD. So this is your first equilibrium price, which is 12 ringgit. And then your first equilibrium quantity is 400 ringgit. Ni saya padam. Okay. And then when the government impose the 4 ringgit tax, supply will shift. Dia shift ke kiri. Sini. Because tax is borne by both consumer and producer. Tapi bila dia letak tax, harga barang supply tu akan naik. Jadi dia pergi sini. So usually dalam exam dia akan bagi this whole jadual graph ya. What you have to do is you only need to identify which is which. So here, after tax, the demand still remain the same. DD lah, cuma dia ada movement in the, kalau tengok sini, dia ada movement di titik. Daripada titik dekat sini, saya letak titik E lah sini, dia pergi ke B. Because kalau ada harga, kalau tax, ada tax, of course harga naik. Jadi dia dekat sini. So ini adalah the new equilibrium point. 14 ringgit, 200 units. So dekat sini, di mana satu adalah consumer share of tax. Consumer share of tax ni adalah tax yang terbeban pada consumer. So consumer share of tax, okay, tengok elok-elok. First, you kena buat satu garisan macam ni. To identify consumer share of tax, above the equilibrium ni adalah consumer. Anything below the equilibrium, ya, titik pertama ni daripada sini, ini adalah producer. So ini adalah ruang tax yang terbeban pada producer, dan bahagian atas ini adalah tax yang terbeban pada consumer. Okay. Anything above equilibrium point adalah consumer. Below equilibrium point adalah producer. You still remember the consumer and producer surplus kan? Usually consumer dekat atas, producer dekat bawah. So what is the total government revenue from tax? Total revenue from tax adalah kawasan A, B, D dengan C ni. Macam mana you nak kira? You kena kira sini darab ini. You tahu kan macam mana nak cari rectangular ataupun square shape punya keluasan. So sini you tengok 14 tolak 10, 4. And then darab 200. Because sini kan 200. So the government tax revenue is 800. Mesti letaklah RM. Kalau dia tak ada RM tak apalah. Kalau dia ada RM dekat sini, let's say dekat sini dia letak RM, so you have to put RM 800. So let's take a look here. Before tax, so before tax, saya padam ni. Before tax, harga equilibrium which yang dah disetujui untuk dibeli adalah RM12. Before tax. Both producer dengan consumer, dia setuju untuk produce and to buy at this price, RM12. Lepas tu, kerajaan impose RM4 tax. So supply dia naik sini. Benda ni memang dia dah bagi. Kalau dalam exam, dia akan bagi. Bukan you sendiri yang akan create this graph. You sendiri, you hanya akan analyze dia punya graph. So what you do, you tahu di sini adalah consumer. This area is the consumer punya area. So, harga baru yang consumer beli adalah 14. So, this is the new equilibrium price where both consumer and producer agrees to it. So, the tax burden on consumer is 14 minus 12. So, RM RM2. How about producer? Okay, producer, kalau producer pula after tax, before tax dia adalah RM12. Okay, tetapi bila government impose RM4 of tax, dia jual pada harga RM14. So consumer jual RM14. Tolak RM12. Ini harga RM14 ni harga jualan dia. Okay, kita tengok ni. Sales at RM14 sahaja. However, seller pay RM4 to the government. Sorry ni. Dia jual RM14 tapi RM4 tu bukan masuk pada seller. RM4 tu dia pay kepada government. So that's why seller is actually selling at RM10. You kena tahu berapa harga seller jual. So seller jual pada harga RM10. So berapa tax burden pada producer? Daripada RM12 ni, always come to the old equilibrium price. RM12 minus 10. So the tax burden on producer is RM2. Apa-apa kena tolak dengan asal. So kita kena tahu dulu berapa harga jualan producer. So producer dia jual pada RM14. Tetapi RM4 tu dia kena bagi dengan government. So actually dia hanya sell at RM10. Ini harga yang dia jual actually. RM4 tu adalah tax. So daripada sini baru you dapat producer punya tax burden, which is 12 minus 10. So this is the table. You boleh refer to your slide later. There are also effects. This is just to show you what are the effects on price elasticity on tax burden. So kalau perfectly inelastic demand. Perfectly inelastic demand meaning to say demand dia memang tak ada tak berkait langsung dengan perubahan harga. So dia jadi macam ni. So this is demand. So this is demand, this is supply. So bila supply dia, bila tax naik, supply shift. So inilah akan terjadi pada demand. So sini you tengok this is the original equilibrium. Tengok ini adalah original equilibrium. Anything above the original equilibrium point area adalah buyer's share of tax. Okay. 16 minus 12, 4 ringgit. So here pula, bila perfectly elastic demand. So demand dia akan sentiasa berubah pada perubahan harga even sedikit pun. So ini adalah equilibrium point asal. So ini adalah S1. So dari sini, kita ambil this area. This is below the equilibrium asal. So this is effect on seller's share of tax. Is 4 ringgit. Ini pula perfectly inelastic supply. Ini S1 je lah maksud dia. Okay, dia tengok perfectly inelastic supply maksud dia tak akan berubah supply tu. Even you letak 4 ringgit. So sini adalah equilibrium point. So any area, this one is seller's share of tax. Okay. Ini adalah seller's share of tax. 4 ringgit. Because dia bawah equilibrium point. And this part pula, perfectly elastic supply. Kedua, berubah macam ni. So this is equilibrium asal. So any area above equilibrium asal adalah buyer share of tax. Yeah. So now effects of price elasticity on tax burden. Demand more elastic than supply. Buyer's share of tax is 1 ringgit. So benda macam ni usually memang dia dah bagi dalam exam. Cuma you kena kira keluasan tu sendiri saja. You tengok sini, ini adalah equilibrium asal. Okay. Demand, perubahan kuantiti demand adalah lebih tinggi daripada supply. Supply ni dia tak berubah sangat kalau dengan perubahan harga. So titik ni yang akan menentukan keluasan share of tax. So sini you tengok ini adalah producer. 12 minus 9. Okay, 3. And then you tengok atas ni 13 minus 2 adalah consumer punya share of tax. Only 1 ringgit. And after that, kita ada demand is less elastic than supply. So this is demand. This is supply. Demand perubahan titik dia tak jauh. Okay. Macam ni. So this is the area. Kecil je. Area. Kita tengok sini, pergi sini. This part is the 12 minus 11 is the seller share. Lepas tu 15 minus 12 is the producer buyers punya share. Just ingat dia punya keluasan, macam mana nak kira keluasan, you will be able to answer this question. Question ni usually kalau past year dia hanya tanya from this graph which area is the consumer share of tax, macam tu. Ataupun ditanya from this graph please calculate the consumer share of tax. Yang tu saja. Bukan you yang disuruh untuk lakarkan this graph. Graph tu sudah dibagi, you hanya tahu macam mana nak cari nak kira producer and consumer punya share. That's all. So kita buat this question. Saya walk through. So here, ini adalah macam contoh soalan yang akan ada dalam exam. Dia akan bagi price and then quantity, lepas tu ada demand and supply. So the price of tax is, tengok sini, mana satu adalah price of tax, which indicates the price of tax. And the price of tax pula. The price after tax. The price after tax adalah from O. Ini adalah the new supply kan. So this is actually the price of tax. This is the equilibrium price. As you know, the first equilibrium price. Lepas tu price of tax is this one. Price after tax. So OE is the price after tax. And then here, the amount of tax per unit. Which area is the amount of tax per unit? So the amount of tax per unit adalah this part. GE. Okay. Ini tadi kan GF adalah buyers, producer. And then FE adalah for consumer. Then bila dia tanya macam ni, amount of tax adalah daripada G ke E. So the area of G to E is the amount of tax. The tax revenue collected by government is, okay, tax revenue adalah, this is the consumer, this is the producer. So this whole E, G, H, L is the, atau E, G, H, L, ataupun G, E, H, L, whatever, antara ni, ini adalah the government revenue. Okay. Then the consumer tax, total tax burden is represented by this area. E, F, H, J. The producer's total tax burden adalah, you already know kan, this area. So this is FG, JL. Untuk total revenue of producer pula, which part? Total revenue for producer. Total revenue means hasil, hasil. Price minus quantity. Price minus quantity, as you guys know, kalau daripada yang producer and consumer surplus punya tu, it is supposed to be this area. This part. Kalau consumer, akan jadi this part lah. Dia tak ada atas tu kan. Dia akan jadi macam ni lah kalau consumer. Ini adalah producer. Total revenue of producer. Of course, producer sajalah yang ada total revenue. So this one, OFJX is the producer revenue. So let's say dalam soalan nanti dia ada bagi nilai ya. Dia bagi ini 4. Ini 2. Ini 6. Ini 4. Ini 2. So tax adalah 6 minus 4. For consumer is RM2. For producer is RM2. So 2 plus 2 is the amount of tax per unit. Yang untuk soalan B. Kalau soalan the price after tax, kita ambil 6. Let's say dia bagi angka macam ni. Ini mungkin ada unit dia 200. Then you carilah revenue yang adalah 4 darab 200. So itu adalah revenue. Kalau kerajaan punya keluasan tadi daripada EG, you kira lah 6 tolak 2, 4. Lepas tu darab 200. Saya bagilah contoh satu lagi yang lebih senang difahami. For example, soalan dia bagi nilai. Dia bagi ini 6, ini 4, ini 2. Ini 200. Dia suruh cari tax, the consumer tax burden. So, consumer tax burden adalah daripada E, H, J dengan F. EF ni lah 6 minus 4. Ini adalah consumer. Atas ni adalah consumer tax. Okay. Lepas tu kalau dia kata berapa adalah tax burden untuk producer? 4 minus 2. So, 2. Kalau dia cakap berapa government punya tax revenue? Government tax revenue is from this to this. So, 6 tolak 2 adalah 4. So, ini tadi 6, 2. E ke G adalah 4. Darab, tengok ni 200. So, dia dapat 800 government revenue. Kalau dia kata total revenue for producer, dari sini ke sini. Kosong F ke 0 ni adalah 4 lah. 4 darab 200 pun 800. Itu producer punya revenue. So this is how the question in your exam will be. And then we have subsidy. Subsidi usually diberi oleh kerajaan kepada penjual usually. So the distribution of subsidy between the buyer and seller by the government depends on the elasticity of demand and supply. So there are several cases. There are several cases such as demand more elastic than supply, seller benefits more from the subsidy. Tapi kalau demand is less elastic than supply, buyer benefits more than from the subsidy. So this is subsidy. Ini macam tax juga. Tapi tax ni usually kerugian lah untuk both buyer and consumer. Tapi untuk subsidi, benefits from both. Tengok, this is the price. This is where the enjoyed by buyer, and this is what is enjoyed by the seller. Consumer pays 50 ringgit per unit of radio. And then producer pula sells at 50 ringgit per unit of radio. After subsidy, so consumer only pay 45 ringgit per unit of radio. And then producer pula sells at 45 ringgit per unit of radio. However, the seller receives 10 ringgit from the government. So ini producer ada benefit. Okay. So subsidy enjoyed by the consumer is 5 ringgit. Sebab dia bayar less than the 50 ringgit harga sebelum subsidi. Tetapi producer pula sama juga. Dia dapat 55 ringgit daripada government. Tetapi dia tolak 50 ringgit. So dia enjoy benefit of 5 ringgit. Even though dia jual pada harga 45 tu. Sebab dia dah disubsidize. 10 ringgit of the price dah disubsidize oleh government. So that's why they can actually reduce the price to 45. Still they enjoy the same amount of profit. Okay. Effects of price elasticity on subsidies. First, demand is more elastic than supply. Buyer's share of subsidy is 3 ringgit and seller's share of subsidy is 7 ringgit. Apabila demand is more elastic than supply. Bila dia more elastic, share of subsidy is 3 ringgit and seller subsidy is 7 ringgit. So seller will benefit more than the buyer. And kalau demand, less elastic than supply, buyer's share of subsidy becomes 7 ringgit. And seller's share of subsidy is 3 ringgit. So here we can see buyer benefits more than the seller from the subsidy. This one you can try to plot your own graph lah. Kita tengok dia punya change. Main-main dengan graph ni. Usually kalau dalam exam dia akan keluar dalam MCQ. Dia hanya suruh you tengok which one benefits more. Which one benefits more. So you tengok kalau keluasan ni lagi tinggi, of course ni maksud dia buyer benefits more than the producer. Then we move to what are the market failure. Market failure exists when a free market is unable to deliver or allocate resources efficiently. It also occurs when the benefits of individuals or firms, like market participants, differ from the benefits of society in trading activities. So as a result, the economic and social welfare of society will not be maximized, leading to a lack of economic efficiency. What are the causes of market failure? First would be the externalities. Externalities adalah cost or benefit that received by third parties who are indirectly involved in the economic transaction. So it causes the cost of or benefits of market participants and society to differ as market participants exclude externalities during production or consumption activities. There are two types of externalities which we consider as negative externalities and also positive externalities. So here, the existence of negative externalities in the market may cause overproduction of goods and services. Thus, the social cost will be higher than the private cost and the social benefit will be less than the private benefit. For example, when a producer overlook its full cost of production, okay? Bila dia overlook dia punya cost of production, negative externalities will arise, resulting too much of the goods being produced under price. On the other hand, positive externalities pula akan lead to under consumption of goods and services, especially merit goods, whereby the social benefit will be higher than the private benefit. Under consumption of merit goods, for example, free access to vaccination arises because society lack proper information regarding the benefits of consuming merit goods. Like what happened these days for vaccination. Banyakkan dia overlook the merits of the vaccination. So dia takut anti-vaccine. So dia tak nak ambil. Itu akan menjadi wastage. Wastage. Then we have this monopoly power. Monopoly power is the market power to control the quantity and price of goods. In a competitive market, producers or suppliers, okay? In a competitive market, producers or supplier have no market power to control quantity and price of goods due to the existence of competition. In an imperfect market, however, producers or suppliers have market power, control over quantity and price of goods. Due to the absence of or limited competition, the existence of imperfect market will lead to misallocation of resources because the producers or suppliers normally set the price of goods higher than the competitive market to gain higher profit. Moreover, quantity of goods produced will be lower than the competitive markets, leading to allocation and production inefficiency. So this is one of the causes of market failure. Okay. Another one is public goods. Public goods are provided by everyone, provided by the government for everyone, okay, without excluding any single person from consuming them. So since we have these public goods, sometimes people take advantage. So the marginal cost of providing an additional output to other consumer is zero. So therefore, public goods can be categorized as non-excludable and then non-rival. These are non-rival adalah the consumption of the good by one person cannot preclude the consumption of that good by another person. Okay. This one you can read through the books. And then we have why is it become one of the market failure? Because a free market economy is unable to distribute public goods at an efficient level due to the free rider issue. Since public goods are non-excludable goods, their benefits can be enjoyed by everyone once provided. So some consumers tend to be free riders by enjoying the benefits of the goods without paying for the cost of production. It is impossible to recover this cost of production. Consequently, the hinders the market from producing the good efficiently, leading to underproduction of public goods. And then the last one has the causes of market failure would be the inadequate information. The market system may not function efficiently when consumers lack adequate information about product prices and quality. So this lack of information on the consumer will cause producers to produce large quantities of some products and less of others. Macam this is like awareness lah, awareness of certain products. Let's say kita tak lack of information about that product. Maksudnya dekat sini ada failure sedikit in terms of the producer itself lah. Dia tak bagi full information. Macam vaccination right now, most people are arguing whether it's good or not. Some people are having the false information and some people are having doubts because they are not aware of this thing. So that's why sometimes it is very important to have awareness on certain things, especially those who are involved in the medication, medical, on these medication products. So people like supplier, dia short sendirilah, dia produce banyak sangat vaksin, but at the end of the day tak ada orang nak ambil because of lack information. So this is one of the causes of market failure. So class, with this we have ended our chapter 4. I'm not going to give you any tutorials for this week. However, later I will post, like on the weekends, I will post some exercises for yourself for you to do practice. And these exercises are going to be quite similar to your midterm. Dia macam practice lah for you before you go to midterm. However, that one you don't have to hantar. Saya akan bagi dia macam, not in the form like this lah. I try to do it like something that you can do interactive, you get the answer right away. Okay, saya tak akan bagi tutorial yang you kena hantar. Because you have 1 week untuk study, I really hope you can use that time wisely to revise back your chapter 1 until chapter 4. And of course, I already mentioned, tak ada tutorial, but I'm going to give you some exercises for your own practice dekat rumah. Sama ada you nak buat sendiri ke, you nak buat in group ke, it's up to you. And that practices akan terus ada you punya jawapan. Okay, akan ada jawapan. I'm going to share it by hopefully by Saturday. Kalau tak ada apa-apa, I dah ada sedikit the question. I'm going to give something like almost similar to your midterm, and I hope you can do well in your midterm. For those who are celebrating Pesta Keamatan and also Gawai, I wish you all a joyful festive season. Jaga SOP and see you again on your midterm the week after the holiday. Enjoy your holiday and also do not forget that you are going to have